So, I'm freaking behind. So, let's try and knock out some videos. They may be late, but I can knock out a few videos now that I'm actually wide awake. Sleep schedule muddling. Middling. This is why you don't work graveyard. This is why, if you can avoid it, don't work graveyard shifts, guys. Anyways, so Aria of Sorrow. This is the big one. This is the one that was the whole reason I did Rondo, uh, excuse me, Rondo, Soten, and then this one. So let's start off by talking about how you how to evolve a genre for a second, because Metroidvanias up until this point have been evolving, and even now one could argue that Metroidvanias have evolved, even have continued to evolve even to this day. Hey, and I myself would also argue that point. It would also argue that point that Metroidvanias have evolved over the years. The thing about uh, the Metroidvania genre is that I kind of tend to prefer a very specific flavor of it. I have actually played a few Metroidvanias where I have been like, well, this isn't very good. Or, this is alright, right? I haven't played some of the more popular ones like Dust and Elysian Tale, for example. Mostly because I just never got around to it. Never really bothered with Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight didn't really look like it appealed to me. Um, Admittedly, Dust actually kind of fell in that same category as, for example, FF6 did. You know, overhyped, the overhyped thing. Now, to be fair, I'm not trying to say that Dust and Elysian Tale, hasn't earned its chops. I mean, God, FF6 proved its chops, so I have no reason to suspect that Dust and Elysian Tale would not do the same. You know, but I will say this much. I will say this much. It's very it's hard for me to fully comprehend what made Aria of Sorrow work, but other Metroidvanias, even within the Castlevania series, not work as well, such as Harmony of Dissonance, and the like. Admittedly, I could have mentioned Circle of the Moon here, but no, I can explain exactly why Circle of the Moon failed on its face. Difficulty spikes out the ass. As you feel like a pissant for 90% of that game, and well, yes, the DSS system is actually very cool and very interesting. It is kind of mixed with a difficulty curve that can go to hell. So there you go, right? Harmony of Dissonance is kind of an interesting take on Metroidvania meets, the Soten meets, the classic Castlevanias. So there's that. And then Lords of Shadow is Lords of Shadow. It's basically a God of War Shadow of the Colossus version of the Castlevania series. I will say this much. Aria is very interesting in that it has a lot of good ideas on display. I will consult my notes here. So, for example, you have a good variety of the weapons this time, including guns, because this is set in the future, which is hilarious because we are like, from my perspective, a dozen years away from from having it be the same year takes place in. So that'll be interesting. It always, time always sounds like it's way far away, and then decades actually pass. I did play this on the advanced collection, and there's some good features there. They're including rewinds and a updated and a better bestiary and yada yada yada. There's a lot of very interesting boss design, And even though it is a bit grindy to get all of the souls, you should be able to get, sufficient souls that kind of help out. The only thing that would make this a little bit grindy in terms of, needing to grind to progress would actually be getting two specific souls, which I will not spoil here because we're not in the spoiler section. Yes, a gameplay aspect that I need to say for the spoiler section, because this one's actually going to have a spoiler section. Now, what's funny is that it Soten did actually have a spoiler section. It did, but at the same time, it kind of didn't. It was kind of weird because it was like, huh, and because it was kind of, huh, you know. But like I said, we can talk about that a bit later. There's a lot of good boss design on display here. A lot of the bosses are just fun to fight. Even the infamous Balor, who hits like a fucking tank. I know tank is usually used in the MMO terms, right? Take a bunch of damage. But when I talk about a tank, I usually talk about it in the capacity of, of military hardware, as in a tank won't take that much damage and will bash your face in with a whole crap ton of damage, right? It's ridiculous. As my phone goes off for the alarm, normally I wake up around this time. So, yeah. The music is really good, though that's really not saying anything. It's Castlevania, of course, it's got good music. It's not the double positive for music that Soten got. I don't think it's on par with Soten. It's definitely got some good music, though. Um, there's some good. This game's actually has a good new game plus, and it's a really good new game plus too. Who, uh, in which you can keep going on the same difficulty or increase the difficulty if you want with all of the items moving forward. So the lazy new game plus that I never like is an option within your new game plus. So in other words, the idea being you can raise the difficulty if you want. If you want to just go back through and curb stomp the game, go back through and curb stomp the game. But if you want to increase the challenge, raise it to hard. That's a nice touch, and that's actually what prevents lazy bad new game plus like that from being a negative. You have your standard Belmont mode because of course, the boss rush mode is kind of cool that you unlock at the end of the game. So I guess I haven't really talked about the soul system yet. So let's talk about the soul system. So what's up with the soul system? Well, you play as a character named Soma Cruz, and he has the power to absorb monster souls. So what happens is his soul will go into Soma, and now he has a special ability based on the soul that he has absorbed. The one you get right at the beginning of the game is the winged skeleton, which allows you to throw spears, which can actually hit and target multiple times if it sticks into them. So what's interesting is you can actually set up a very specific soul set that's tailored to your playstyle. It's effectively a build. Now you have to grind out to acquire the necessary items for that build, the necessary souls for that build, but it is very interesting that you can actually customize yourself even further than you could in Soten. In Soten, you basically had to equip specific weapons, and kind of plan out what kind of attacks you wanted to do, right? And the only real way to vary that up was with a la carte spells and those awful, awful, awful Street Fighter inputs. Aria, by contrast, has the souls. Now, so you can actually set up yourself to have special attacks that act kind of like the sub weapons, but there's a much wider variety of what they call bullet souls. So you can actually, so for example, you have one that you can send fleamen after your opponents. You have the spears from the winged skeletons, as I mentioned. You can throw bones from regular skeletons. You can, I think there's one, evil butcher, I think, is the one where you can toss knives at your opponent. Um, the the there's one that lets you shoot fireballs at your opponent. There's one that lets you throw an axe, right? There's one that there's literally one, the Red Minotaur, which has this. It costs a lot of MP, but it's basically a giant AOE of death that you can hit your opponents with, and it's fantastic. And then, and then, and then there's, uh, you know, and then of course there's the Guardian Souls, which is hold R, and there's different abilities that you get from there. There's one that constantly heals you. There's an ability one that lets you slowly slow your descent. There's one where you literally can just go flying around. And again, I will talk about its name when we get to the spoiler section because I don't. For those that haven't played this game, I don't want you figuring out the twist in 2 seconds because I yapped about the souls variety. There's one that can literally make you fly. There's one that literally can actually heal you every time you attack an enemy. It's actually attack an enemy, or even if you hit one of the candles that usually contain the hearts. And if you're full of MP, it gives you money, right? We have the ability to sell weapons that we don't want, weapons and armor that we don't want. Thank you. That was actually one of my biggest criticisms about inventory management in Soten, right? Uh, there's literally a full heal spot right at the first area in the game. Uh, there's a character named Yoko, or not, sorry, not Yoko, Mina, sorry. You go talk to Mina occasionally. Usually, if you're hurt, you can just kind of warp back to the very beginning, which is also where the shop ends up. So if you warp back to the shop, basically, you go talk to Mina, full heal. Even if you don't save, just full heal. And considering the only enemies in the first couple of areas are, the early game enemies, yeah, you can actually fully heal and just kind of keep going, right? If you're right in the middle of an area and you didn't really get to a save point in, say, the arena, for example, you can just go, but you found the warp point, you can just warp back to Mina and be like, "Hi, Mina, how you doing?" Oh, and I'm doing all right. Now here, let me fully heal you. It's a great touch, and honestly, one of my personal favorite things about this game. Um, there's a lot, and you can even find your personal favorite weapon and combo and everything. For the record, my favorite is of course the heal on hit, the flying around, and the Clum Soleus. No, not that Clum Soleus. Yes, we're not talking about trails. At least not in the videos here. But it's a giant holy sword that does an overhead damage, which is another thing I like. Weapon variety. Each weapon kind of has a different arc that you have to, you find the right weapon and you can actually, you know, have the entire thing. I actually like Column Solis because it has a lot of reach around Soma and it's so good, right? It's crazy. There's good, like I said, there's good variety in your attacks, and honestly, it's kind of funny because in a lot of cases, gameplay wise, I don't really have much to say, honestly. And also, this game avoided walkthroughitis because there's actually items you can find if you just explore the map. You will eventually find items that will hint at the souls that you need to unlock the true ending, which is good. It sucks that the normal ending doesn't unlock all the extra bells and whistles, but I suppose that makes sense. Which is funny because the true ending was always locked on the GBA version on the GBA cartridge that I had done, because apparently somebody had borked their cartridge, I think by attempting to hack it, and that basically locked them out of being able to progress this unless they did soul trading, which you could actually link up your GBA with another player and actually just kind of help each other complete the soul collection. Kind of stupid that was the case, but every other version, every other GBA card and every other re-release has it properly there. So, if you're playing this on if if you bought this on the Wii U eShop before the shop closed, from your perspective, that will have been. Give me a moment to double check that. That will have been this month because or no, that will have been last month from your perspective because this is coming out in June. Yes, June 2nd. So, if you managed to get it before the eShop closed, before the eShop closed, God, that was still dumb. But anyways, you know, but but again, the advanced collection is a nice alternative, and I do recommend the advanced collection. So there's that, which is funny because that means I actually have this game on two platforms, specifically the Switch and the the Wii U eShop version. Now, I of course did review this on the PS4, but that was only because I borrowed a friend's essentially a friend's copy of it, even though it was a digital copy, because on the PS4 you could do that. It's kind of a convoluted way to do it because heaven forbid we share games with our friends, but whatever. But regardless, yeah, I think that's all I have for gameplay. I don't have much to say about the rest of it. It's all good stuff, like I said. There's some of the souls that just do not work, like the zombie officer is kind of worded weird, so it's like hard to know what the hell you're supposed to do with it. The floating gardens is kind of an annoying area. The arena is kind of a freaking difficulty spike from hell in terms of areas because holy shit. Hit. And I'm not just talking about the fight with Balor. Balor, funny enough, is like one of the more tame aspects of the arena. Like seriously, there are some rooms in the arena that are just oh my god, what the hell. Although I will say that is one of the two best areas to farm. Uh, the heal on hit move. So there's that. But now that's it. So now it's time to talk spoilers. So, this is your obligatory spoiler warning 20 minutes in. Spoiler, spoiler, spoilers. Spoiler, spoilers. Spoiler, spoiler, spoilers. Spoilers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright. So, there's three things I want to talk about right off the bat. Genya Arikado. I'm giving you a chance because I don't want to. Genya Arikado, Soma, and Julius. Now, I stayed tight-lipped as I could on spoilers for a reason, and you're probably thinking, well, why, Blue Wolf? It's a Castlevania game. Well, this is your last chance for spoilers because, from a meta perspective, this was the game changer all along. Because, see, Lords of Shadow was basically just copying a game from 2003? I'm not actually sure when this game came out. No, no, but the copy to GBA game. Spoilers for Lords of Shadow, I guess. Is of playing as Dracula, which you do in the second game. More so, you do so in the second game. But for plot reasons, which I'm not going to spoil here. But yeah, that's as far as I want to go with that. What I like most about the big twist is that it's more of a meta twist than it is a in lore twist. Like from an in lore perspective, if you know nothing about the franchise, it is still a decent twist. But for Castlevania fans, oh geez, that's a twist and a half, right? But let's start with Genya Arikado, aka Alucard. Now, what's interesting about Alucard becoming Genya is, remember last time when I said that Maria, it was my opinion that Maria kind of helped Alucard, not give up on humanity? Well, this is my evidence. Because I did actually acknowledge that he was Genya here. What's interesting about Alucard being Arikado here is he is being manipulative of Soma, but it's because he actually is testing Soma the entire time. Because Soma, well, is the reincarnation of Dracula. All throughout the game, in the quote unquote, the red herring villain Graham it believes wholeheartedly that he is actually Dracula. He's wrong. He's just a twisted jackass who thought he was entitled to extreme amounts of power, but really was not. He was basically just an entitled douchebag. Fans of Devil May Cry may be like, that sounds familiar, and it should, because Graham is effectively the Castlevania series' version of Arkham. Arkham, the character, not the Batman location, or Batman series, or Batman game series. Because Arkham from DMC3 was exactly the same way. A power mad douchebag who thought he was entitled to power and and spoilers for that game, got his just desserts. Which is funny because I actually have a whole headcanon involving Lady with all of that shit. Namely, it messed her up. That's why she's not in DMC 1 or 2. And then by the time DMC 4 rolled around, okay, now she's better and she can actually start kicking ass. It's a headcanon mostly because, well, DMC 5 doesn't treat Lady very well, and that's all I want to say about that. But to get back to Aria of Sorrow, the big twist with Soma being Dracula is actually brilliant from a meta perspective, because we've been playing as Dracula the whole time, and that's kind of a nice twist. And I love that it's always Soma. because Dracula never fully takes control unless you lose to chaos. Let's talk about Soma for a second. Soma is very interesting in that he's pissed when he finds out that he's Dracula, the reincarnation of Dracula, because he didn't want to. He didn't want to become Dracula. He didn't want to know he was the reincarnation of the king of evil. Why would he want to know that? And Arikado literally looks at him and says, "Yeah, no, you weren't supposed to wake up. You weren't supposed to become all powerful. You were supposed to, for all intents and purposes, everybody would have been fine with your powers just remaining dormant and never having to wake up. But the problem was that this was inevitable. Castlevania was always going to come out of the freaking eclipse that it got sealed into, which I haven't even mentioned up to this point because it's a silly plot point. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh effect, as I like to call it. Stupid premise, good execution. Because I'm focusing on what is actually necessary. Because okay, Soma getting teleported inside of a solar eclipse versus getting teleported to Europe is just as ridiculous. It's just the eclipse is a lot more anime than being teleported to another country would be. Now, I mentioned that there was hints. There were souls that I was being hush-hush on until the spoiler section. Well, what hints at it? Well, because there's 3 that you need to unlock to find out the twist. The Flame Demon, the Hellfire, the triple fireballs across the screen, the Flying Soul for the Guardian Soul, which is the giant bat. Well, I guess I should. There's the succubus, the heal on hit. That's the succubus soul, and then there's the flying soul, which is the giant bat. Now you see why I didn't want to name them or even describe them that much, except for the succubus, because the succubus thing is like, I mean, granted, that was like the only hint because absorbing blood, right? But what's interesting is that I love the fact that this story is so simple because yeah, I went through this whole shtick about it. I needed to do a spoiler section, and I'm already basically at the end of it because there isn't much for me to say. This is a good idea. There are some good ideas here, and I admit I don't even remember what all they do with it in Dawn of Sorrow, but I'm pretty sure that's just oh, Soma has Dracula's powers, and he's basically just leaving them dormant. Well, that can't be allowed, so rawr, right? Regardless, though, I actually kind of like this. And I kind of like this because it kind of gives you a bit of a Babylon 5 effect, which is things being different the second time around. The way Soma interacts, Yoko, Genya, and Graham interact with you makes more sense the second time around when you know the twist. And I do like that everybody is just like, you can actually go back to talk to them after the twist. Everybody is, and in universe it is a little silly that everybody is just like, well, that's ridiculous. It's like, oh, holy crap, he's Dracula. Okay, that's it. I do like the idea of going to fight the Chaos Core in order to kind of effectively take control of Dracula's powers. It's actually kind of a nice idea. Yeah, because it removes the threat of Dracula. The soul of Dracula can just pass on peacefully while his powers are used by Soma for good. It's actually kind of a nice idea. I don't remember if that's the explanation they go with in Dawn of Sorrow, but I mean that's the headcan. If nothing else, I can just headcanon it to that and be done with it. So, Aria of Sorrow, ladies and gentlemen. What's interesting about Aria of Sorrow is Aria of Sorrow is very. It is effectively where I would feel like the Castlevania's, timeline storyline ends. And I would argue this is actually a nice cap to what I consider to be the Rondo trilogy, which is, of course, Rondo, Soten, and this one. And while I don't have access to reviewing Dawn of Sorrow, if it ever it comes in a collection, bet your ass I'd be open to reviewing that someday, because I think that would be awesome. Regardless of any of that, though, I'm basically just rambling because Aria of Sorrow, it's a very simple, very good game. And I don't have anything else to say. I highly recommend this. I recommend the Advanced Collection just in general because Harmony of Dissonance is a decent game. Circle of the Moon has its fans, but and of course it has the Dracula export of Rondo, but let's not get into that. But hey, two amazing game. Well, okay, an amazing game, a good game, and one game that you might find good, and one that is just kind of there is not bad, especially considering the built-in rewind cheats and all that. But that's it. Aria of Sorrow, ladies and gentlemen. But we're not done with it. We're not done entering the realm of horror yet, because next week, well, we dealt with vampires. Now it's time to deal with zombies. With the OG RE2. Till next time, Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one.